Super Mario Galaxy 2. Originally conceived as additional content for Super Mario Galaxy, that content ended up being so robust with ideas, it was turned into a full-fledged sequel. Galaxy 2 is one of those sequels that plays nearly identically to its predecessor, but considering how well Galaxy controls, that's not at all a bad thing. In fact, Galaxy 2 is an even snappier game, with a greater focus on platforming and variety. However, in exchange, the magical narrative and world building of the first game has been greatly reduced, leaving a title that feels a lot more like you're playing a video game. Whether or not it manages to capture the charm of the first Galaxy is debatable, but there's no denying how creative the level design here is. In this video, I'm going to lay out what I found to be the best and the worst aspects of this game. Be warned that full spoilers for Super Mario Galaxy 2 are on the table. The best. Number 1, controlling Mario. A shock, I know. I've only highlighted the controls every time I've covered a 3D Mario platformer, though this is the first time his controls have been brought over from the previous entry, which is a perfectly fine choice. Mario didn't need anything added to his moveset for this game. Jumping and running around still feels great, and everything's responsive and smooth. The post-game green stars sometimes even ask for aptitude with his moveset, giving you more opportunities to make the most of his options. Interacting with things feels very organic thanks to clever visual design. It's nice to have another adventure with the spin move, and even better, Galaxy 2 utilizes it in several new ways to get you thinking before belting it out. Collecting star bits with the Wii Mote still presents an elegant multitasking element while playing. Galaxy 1 had a lot of long-winded challenges, but these have been greatly reduced, and 2's even more focused on platforming. Outside of swimming without a shell or gliding with Fluzzard, you almost always have a quick, free feeling of movement. And this is especially noticeable with the new power-ups and Yoshi. Which brings me to number 2, fun power-ups. While most of the first game's power-ups return for the sequel, they're thankfully each only used a few times. My issue with some of them was they exchanged Mario's empowering moveset for slow mobility. That made the platforming less fun. I can appreciate their inclusion more here for the novelty, since they're used much less. A good decision so Galaxy 2 doesn't feel too much like a retread. Even better, every new power-up this game introduces is a success, and they're almost all centered around platforming in some way. Each one with clear rules paired well to interesting challenges, and since there are so many of them, they never feel overused. The Cloud Flower is easily the most creative. A resource-based power-up isn't common throughout the series, but provides a ton of flexibility that can pay off when used mindfully. It's a fantastic concept executed brilliantly. The Drill and Rock power-ups are well considered too, giving you unconventional ways to move through the environment. Yoshi's back and rideable for the first time since Sunshine, and wow, he finally feels nice to control in 3D. The pointer deserves a lot of credit for making this dynamic playstyle possible, since you can move around while simultaneously striking things with his tongue. Yoshi feels worthwhile this time around, and they've even gone a step further to give him his own imaginative power-ups that alter his mobility. Shout out to the Bulbberry in particular, which is an inspired idea that, like everything else, is used sparingly enough that it never gets old and is enjoyable whenever it's the focus. Number 3, level design. The original Galaxy's impressive for well-crafted levels with rewarding platforming. Go figure, Galaxy 2 ramps this up even further. This is some of the best platforming in the series, with a stunning amount of freshness and diversity. Directions clear and conveyed naturally, so you'll always know where you should be going or what you should be doing. Like I said, Galaxy 2 has a much faster pace than 1, and has almost completely abandoned the collectathons in large areas that could take over 10 minutes. Challenges are mostly straightforward now, with a more player-friendly pace since nothing lingers long enough to get stale, and gameplay's constantly changed up. Previously, collecting purple coins was a daunting, exhaustive task, but 2 has very few challenges like this, so it's easier to stay engaged and want to keep playing. The absence of pull stars highlights this further. They're barely present now, whereas they had a very large focus in 1. Levels feel like the perfect length, often around 8 minutes, so it's a comfortable pace. It helps that Galaxy 2 introduces a lot of fun concepts for challenges. Cosmic clones following your movement are an especially good addition, asking you to think carefully about your path so it doesn't backfire later on. Also worth highlighting the Beat Block Galaxy. It's always cool to see a level that incorporates the soundtrack, and this is not only a solid test, but one of the most memorable levels in the game. Number 4, Comet Challenges. In the original Galaxy, prankster comets were alright as an idea, but let down by their execution. Daredevil comets were the only ones that felt engaging. Don't get me wrong, the cosmic races were a cool idea, but ended up just feeling like repackaged time trials. And while some of the purple coin collectathons could be a good time, most of them just took too long. On top of this, it was a convoluted process to get certain comets to show up in certain places, an unnecessarily convoluted system. 2 vastly improves on all of this. Comets now appear sporadically as you play the game and grab comet medals. These medals don't feel necessary, but they do incentivize you to look around more. What's really great though is now, once a comet challenge is available, it's permanently available, and the new menu select makes returning to old galaxies easier than before since it abandons the tedium of running through a hub world. The comets have more variety too. Time trials are back, but a lot more interesting since some of them have time pickups scattered around, so you have to focus on grabbing them as opposed to just playing through a level again at a brisk pace. Some galaxies even cut out parts of levels or add new things entirely, like the meteors in Hightail Falls. Purple coin missions have also been improved. They're used much more sparingly to start, and have been streamlined a great deal. They're no longer the monotonous time sinks they used to be. Galaxy 2 did a great job fixing up this system, so instead of comets being tiresome, they're entertaining. Number 5, a few more things. I'm just gonna list these off. No surprise here, the game looks great. Galaxies are colorful and inviting, so you want to start exploring right away. And I love that stars have kept their shimmering golden glow. Boss battles are well designed again, with proper escalation. The opening's nice and brief, so it doesn't take long to start playing, and gameplay's rarely ever taken away for long. The Throwback Galaxy is a cute inclusion, and incredibly charming for 64 fans. It's not an amazing level, but the novelty of its inclusion makes it worth it. Finally, I like a lot of the new enemy and character designs. Whittles are an instant classic for a Mario NPC, and pretty adorable. Lubba makes a strong impression, changing up the typical Luma look and just being a nice pal throughout the adventure. I also dig the Chimp. This guy had a lot of potential as a recurring side character, but it's alright. Whittles have at least shown up in a few games down the line. Things are looking good for Super Mario Galaxy 2. It certainly improves on a lot of its predecessor's weaknesses, but wouldn't you know it, there's still a lot to get to. This game has its fair share of questionable decisions, and despite just how inventive Galaxy 2 feels overall, there's a whole other side to this game that wants to squeeze absolutely everything it can out of the player. The worst. Number 1, a lack of charm. While it's nice how much faster Galaxy 2 is at getting you playing, there's no denying how diminished the sense of wonder here is compared to the first game. The starting setup's especially bland. It works as an excuse to get things going, but is so uncompelling it doesn't feel like it's even trying. It couldn't feel more like going through the motions, and while you could say the same about a lot of other Mario games, it's very noticeable here, after the first Galaxy's thorough attempt at world building. The starship being a giant Mario head, and the new level select menu don't help. While this menu does make it easier to jump between levels, contextually, this is all very random. Why do I have to get specific stars to open the way forward in space of all places? Galaxy 1 wasn't a king of context either, but the way 2's framed is just so uninspired. I know the Comet Observatory could be a hassle to get around, but this starship's markedly less charming. And the fact Galaxy 2 seems to willfully ignore the first game makes it all feel pointless. I get it, this is a glorified level pack that needed a basic premise to get the ball rolling, but I'm going to call out how superficial this setup feels because that's exactly what it is. Number 2, the camera. This problem keeps coming up, doesn't it? But kind of expected considering this game uses the same system as last time, although truthfully it's less of a problem here thanks to the reduced emphasis on curved planetoids. But that's thanks to the more linear level design than the camera itself. Even so, unusual positioning can still cause Mario to respond unpredictably. The control stick gets hung up in strange ways at times, which can leave you unsure which direction to push to go where you want. The camera can also be stingy, where it simply won't turn in certain directions at times, even when there's plenty of space to get a good look at things, so some approaches are going to be more difficult due to the unnecessary limitations. This is most noticeable during the Green Star Challenge, where you'll often want to get a look around to see exactly where a green star is, and be completely unable to do so. You'd think with so many collectibles that ask for careful observation of your surroundings, you'd have more freedom over actually looking around. Number 3, lives and coins. I've complained about lives in platformers before. They simply do not have value when they're given out constantly, and it couldn't feel like a more outdated system in this game. I had 38 lives by the time I got my 3rd star. They're given as rewards for lots of different things, but because they're constantly used as an incentive, you're actually discouraged from bothering with things since the reward is more often than not something you don't need. The small timed areas where you fight enemies are a great example as something not even worth bothering with, since they always give out lives, they're just a waste of time. Worse yet, you still get nothing for collecting lives when you're already maxed out. At least give me a handful of star bits, anything to make me care to grab these things, and giving out more star bits would also help reduce the need to grind them later on. I'm literally obtaining nothing for getting a life when I already have 99. The ship even offers chance cubes to get more lives. At least have the possibility for huge star bit payouts. They feel pointless as is. Also, like the last game, coins are upstaged by star bits, and still have weak value, though at least they can now be used to feed hungry Lumas and unlock paths in levels. Sadly, this is situational, and unless you know you need to collect them ahead of time, there's still little reason to do so, but at least they feel a bit more relevant. Number 4, padding. Every 3D Mario game stretches content to some extent, but Galaxy 2 is one of the worst offenders. Green stars are the main reason why, and we'll get to them soon enough, but there are multiple instances beyond them of clear padding. For example, the supermassive galaxy essentially has to be completed 3 times. Once normally, a second time as a time trial, and a third time only to run around a small planet before being handed a star. This galaxy is an especially egregious example of stretched content, since this is also one of the few time trials that doesn't have time pickups or change the level. It's just doing the same thing again. The Battle Belt Galaxy is another one loaded with padding, asking you to refight the first 2/3 of enemies again to get to the coin Luma, and also has a Daredevil Comet that has you do the entire level again. Something that really rubs me the wrong way is the inane requirement of having to refight the final boss again after collecting all of the stars to unlock the green ones. There's no good reason to have to go through this level again, and it becomes completely unacceptable when you realize you have to watch the ending cutscenes and credit sequence all over again, because they're entirely unskippable when the game knows you've already watched them. It's unbelievable this isn't skippable the second time through. Absolutely no respect for your time. Just start the hunt immediately after getting the last star. But that's not all. I haven't even mentioned the insanely tedious grind for 9,999 star bits you have to put in the bank just to unlock the final Comet Challenge. Even judiciously collecting star bits throughout a playthrough, you still need to deliberately grind thousands of them, and nothing in the game even makes it clear that this is how you unlock the final challenge. Talk about shamelessly doing whatever you can to stretch out the playtime. Number 5, green star padding. This is unfortunate, since tracking down green stars is a really fun idea. Figuring out clever spots they've been placed and exactly how to snag them can be really absorbing. Sometimes they'll really get you thinking, but sadly, most of them come off as low-effort padding. Half the time, green stars will be placed somewhere that isn't hard to get to, and doesn't require a fancy maneuver. Often, it'll be more about just finding where a star is instead of doing anything special to grab it. Tons of green stars are placed at the ends of levels, so you end up having to play a lot of levels over again just to grab something different at the end. Green stars add an insane amount of padding to the game, and the final galaxy's held hostage behind completing it. The Battle Belt Galaxy, which I complained about before, is a great example of just how bad their integration can be. 2 of the green stars here ask you to complete nearly the entire level again. It's already asking a lot to have you collect another 120 stars, but this is completely unapologetic filler. Even if you know where they all are, the way menus and messages are presented make this even worse. During this portion, every time you go to a galaxy, the game thinks it's necessary to shove a blaring Prankster Comet label in your face. It's so unnecessary, it's hard to believe it wasn't included just to increase playtime, but man does it make this part tedious, and that's just one of several things that waste your time. You can't skip opening level scenes even though you've seen them all before. Star collect messages, star bits, coins, saving, unskippable intros, animations, and comment alerts for every single green star. It's exhausting. Making this game so much longer than it needs to be, it just feels desperate. Well, that was quite the buffet of weaknesses, but I stand by Super Mario Galaxy 2 being one of the best platformers in the series. A lot of its issues come from how stretched out its content feels, in order to justify its existence as a standalone game, but the primary adventure has more than enough creativity and satisfying gameplay to be worth seeking out for that alone. But which is the better game? Does this surpass the original title? I can see both cases. The original Galaxy has a charm to it that this game completely lacks, as well as the originality of the Galaxy aesthetic and controls. But Galaxy 2 has more refined level design, power-ups, and challenges. I value the original title more, but I don't think either game eclipses the other. It's not strange to consider them part of the same experience. I can certainly see why a lot of people hold Super Mario Galaxy 2 as the best in the series, and I don't blame them for thinking it's an improvement. It does improve on a lot of things Galaxy started, so even if it overstays its welcome when you want to see everything, it's a wonderful standard for 3D platforming design and a whole lot of fun. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked my video, subscribe and check out my Patreon. Thank you so much to my patrons for your support. I'll see you next time.